All right, so it turns out the crazy trade deadline still had one more surprise for us, even a little bit after it ended. The Mark Williams Laker trade got rescinded. Shams says Mark Williams did not pass the physical. And so we just undo the whole thing. Mark Williams goes back to the Hornets, Dalton Knecht and Cam Reddish go back to the Lakers, and the Lakers, of course, they also get their picks back, And of course, I mean, everybody's had concerns about Mark Williams' health over this whole thing, and also just where his defense is really at compared to like the early days of his career as well. But of course, the big thing here is the Lakers thought they had a center, and now they don't. And now Jackson Hayes is your 5, and the deadline is passed, which means, of course, you cannot make a move for anybody else. There's also Christian Koloko, and we're waiting on Christian Wood to see if he's healthy at all. There's also Trey Jemison, but he and Koloko are two-way guys, so they actually can't play in the playoffs unless you give them a guaranteed roster spot. It's a whole thing. As always, if I make a CBA mistake somewhere, my bad. And besides the very awkward conversation that the Hornets and the Lakers need to have now with their guys coming back, this gives Charlotte an opportunity to once again see if the LaMelo-Mark Williams connection can be an actual thing over a longer stretch of games than we've seen so far. And then for the Lakers, I mean, LeBron has looked so good these past few games. I mean, that Warriors game, the confidence that he had on those jumpers, like, the joke everybody's making is that Luka showing up just made LeBron, like, go into a new prime or revisit the fountain of youth again, whatever you want to say here. And now you think about Luka, if those Luka lobs are going to be there, it's going to be with Jackson Hayes pretty much, unless the Lakers can find somebody on the buyout market in a little bit here. And as far as finding another center, well, here's the thing. The Lakers got 2 guys back in this. So therefore, they actually are at 15 players. So if they want to get somebody on the open market, which, by the way, it gets complicated because of, how close you are to the apron and stuff like that. Like, they can't do much here. But they would have to waive somebody, and then they could go on the open market for a center, with which, let's not exactly say the open center market is stacked, but there's a couple of names. And before I throw a bunch of those names at you that I know you're just dying to hear, I might make a CBA mistake here because basically when you're above the first apron, you can't sign guys to a buyout where they were making more than the mid-level, but the mid-level's like 12-something, and Larry Nance makes like 11-something. So you might be able to do that, and, well, Larry Nance getting bought out for the Hawks would be very interesting for the Lakers. But I might have messed that up, and if I did, just forget about that. Sure, he's not technically a center, he's a big forward, but you know what I mean. And for semantics' sake, it has to be a pro-rated deal. If you care, you don't care. I believe Bismack Biyombo just signed somewhere. Yeah, it was the Spurs on a 10-day contract. Not to say that Biyombo was going to be the answer, but more so to say that's more so what you're hoping for now if you're a Laker fan just trying to find anything at the center position. I'm going down the center free agent market. Mo Bamba's out there, I guess. I'm sure Dwight Howard has a tweet ready to go for this whole situation. I think Daniel Tice is out there now. It's been a minute since he was really solid for the Celtics. That was many years ago now. I know Wiseman is out there, but I just wouldn't go that route. I think you need as safe of an option as you can find right now, which maybe that's just not on the table, but this is what we're working with. You think Robin Lopez has anything left in the tank? Do you think Moses Brown can give you anything? And again, they'd have to waive somebody first. So we'll see what they do there, but yeah, like you're probably just going to be seeing more small ball lineups. I mean, Jackson Hayes is going to play about 20-some minutes a game in these, then after that, well, JJ's going to have to make it work between LeBron, Rui, Finney Smith, Vando. Might just have to get into more switching lineups. Now, for everything I'm saying, if Mark Williams' physical was the reason that this didn't happen, then I mean, for the Hornets' sake, that gets awkward because clearly they were ready to move on from him because they did for like 2 days. And then this might say to the rest of the league, well, we're kind of iffy on his physical stuff. And then the Lakers are now iffy on his physical stuff. Would anybody else want to acquire the dude as well? Like, this does put a bit of a something on Mark Williams and I guess the Hornets and their future options with him. I mean, again, he's got a couple years left in his rookie contract, so they could extend him this offseason, and after they were ready to move off of him, I don't know if that's likely. So it's overall just a can of worms, and it's going to be a bit awkward on probably more so the Charlotte Mark Williams side. If you're Dalton Knecht, like, you're a rookie, man. Don't get me wrong. You can still feel weird about the whole situation, but the Lakers are just going to be like, hey, Dalton, welcome back, buddy. As far as Cam Reddish, I don't know. And so now we once again have the conversation of, at some point, the Lakers are going to have to find that long-term center for Luka. Now, we just saw that they were clearly willing to move the 2031 pick, the 30 swap, and then Dalton Knecht as well to get that center. And so, I mean, it's tough because, look, they've been looking really damn good lately without Luka showing up yet. And, I mean, you just think about somebody screening for him and just the threat of the role, as well as, like, LeBron spotting up around it or Luka spotting up off of LeBron with Finney Smith and whether Reaves or Rui spotting up off of it. You know, the whole thing makes itself, right? Well, we're now going to have to move these conversations into the offseason where once again open up the idea of, could it be Nick Claxton, who has not been as good this season, but you imagine him playing with a great creator and just a different situation where there's more at stake. You would hope you can get the best version of Claxton again. Switching, rim protection, the whole thing. I mean, they didn't get Miles Turner at the deadline, and I would imagine the Pacers are going to want to keep Miles Turner. Jakob Poeltl, well, after the Brandon Ingram trade, I imagine the Raptors' goal, I don't know if it's going to work or not, but their goal is going to be to try to win basketball games next season, and having Ingram on a new contract plus whoever they draft this offseason. So we'll see. Weird stuff. I guess we can now say the deadline content is officially over, right? I assume?
Things aren't great for the Charlotte Hornets right now, but it wasn't always like this. Just go back to November 21st. The Charlotte Hornets are about to play the Detroit Pistons. Two of their best four players aren't in the game. Unethical hooper Miles Bridges and sometimes a Laker Mark Williams won't even suit up. But that doesn't matter. The two young guns for the Hornets, LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, put on an absolute show. Both of them scoring over 35 points. They look like Kevin Durant at a nightclub, just continually hitting clutch shot after clutch shot, and this game was exciting. LaMelo Ball showed off his passing brilliance, in addition to getting into the lane at will and hitting tough step-back jumpers. Brandon Miller showed absolute poise and hit clutch shot after clutch shot, giving us a little bit of a preview into why Paul George was his favorite player. Brandon Miller's got the whole bag and the size to back it up. Tough one-legged floaters, push shots, and clutch three-pointers when it mattered most. At the end of this game, Hornets players were hugging, high-fiving, happy. The future looked bright. But that was 3 months ago, and a lot has changed in the NBA. It's February now, and Grant Williams is out for the season. The Hornets put on a fire sale, and they got rid of every veteran player they could, and some young players they couldn't. Cody Martin, gone. Nick Richards, gone. Micic, gone. And the Hornets are firmly committed to being as bad as they can this year to hope that they get another draft pick, but stop me if you haven't heard this before. The Hornets tanking. The Hornets playing for the future. But there's something about the Mark Williams trade that didn't go through that really pissed me off. And no, it's not the fact that the Hornets tried to get one over on the Lakers, sending them two teenagers standing on top of each other on a trench coat and calling it Mark Williams. Everything the Hornets were saying was wrong. It's impossible to believe the Hornets' side of this. If what they're saying is true and Mark Williams was healthy, then why are you trading a talented double-double machine 23-year-old center when you already have a 24-year-old LaMelo Ball? Why are you trading this guy to get draft picks in the 2030 and 2031 season? Hornets fans are tired of waiting. They haven't made the playoffs since the 2016 season. It's going to be coming up on a decade of not being in the postseason. The last time the Hornets were in the playoffs, Julian Newman looked like a good mixtape player. The last time the Hornets were in the playoffs, Donald Trump would run for president. The last time the Hornets were in the playoffs, Melo wasn't LaMelo, he was Carmelo. It was a different time. And speaking of LaMelo, the Hornets have a situation brewing. LaMelo Ball is a 23-year-old superstar that has been branded a loser. He's the ultimate pickup basketball player. This guy is the Michael Jordan of LA Fitness players. LaMelo Ball plays beautiful and weird and unfundamental basketball, and he's really damn popular. In fact, LaMelo just became the first player in NBA history to lead their category in All-Star fan votes and not make the team. The fans, the Zoomers, even some millennials love LaMelo Ball, but the coaches, the players, the commissioner does not. And so we're sitting in an NBA where the Dallas Mavericks just traded Luka Doncic because they didn't think he could bring them a championship. They just traded a 25-year-old superstar because they did not want to give him the super max. Are you really going to give LaMelo Ball this extension? Are you going to surround him with losing players? Are you going to trade away all of the competency? And then LaMelo is going to be stuck in this Harlem Globetrotters style of basketball while never making the playoffs. If a team would trade Luka, tell me why they would give the Supermax extension to LaMelo Ball to go out and win 20-25 games every season. And we're not even talking about his ankles and if he can stay healthy. It's hard to tell because when you have a team that is committed to tanking, it's hard to tell how good these players are at basketball. Is LaMelo Ball really injuring his ankles every game and every quarter? Or are the Hornets looking for any excuse to sit their best players so they don't win games? Make no mistake about it. If LaMelo Ball was on the Miami Heat or the New York Knicks, he would have been an all-star this season. But the league has had enough with rewarding flashy players on garbage teams. You can look at Tyrese Maxey, who had an unbelievable season on a failed Sixers team, and you can see that there's this trend of not giving the all-star designation to players that put up good stats on bad teams. So what are the Hornets going to do? Are they going to extend a LaMelo Ball that they've never let play in real competitive basketball games? Or are they going to trade him and start the rebuild over again? Maybe if you're a Hornets fan, maybe you can tell your kids that they'll eventually get to see the Hornets in the playoffs. This is not how an NBA organization is supposed to be run. The Hornets have been rebuilding since they were the Bobcats. And usually they're not quite awful enough to dominate the draft lottery, but they're just garbage enough that no one cares about the franchise. And they're willing to keep the rebuild going by trading Mark Williams, who was either a 23-year-old walking time bomb or a 23-year-old walking double-double, depending on which side of the narrative you believe. The Hornets are making this team hard to root for, and Hornets fans deserve better. Now you've got Mark Williams not showing up to play with the team. His feelings are hurt. He's snip, snap, snip, snap. Do you have any idea what that does to a man? It's crazy that the Hornets were about to get more draft compensation trading Mark Williams to the Lakers than it took to get Luka Doncic. It really makes you question what the Mavs were doing. But that trade didn't happen. And so where are we now? We're kind of stuck in NBA purgatory, and that feels like the direction the Hornets are heading. Is one high draft pick, is Cooper Flagg on this team really going to change the fate of this franchise? I mean, on one hand, I'm excited about the idea of a healthy Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, and Cooper Flagg. Those are three talented, exciting young players. And maybe you put Mark Williams on crutches or stilts out there, and now you've got a fantastic four. If it wasn't hard enough to get excited and to root for this Hornets team, they don't even have the moral high ground. Are we really surprised that the Hornets tried to pull a fast one over on the Lakers, that their front office would be unethical when Miles Bridges is on this team? I believe in second chances, but it's really tough. It's tough to get excited about rooting for Miles Bridges. We don't have to go into it again. Miles Bridges, the basketball player, is a good basketball player. He can score pretty much at will. He's strong. He reminds you of a 90s player with his build and his physicality, but he still has an outside touch. He can even finish with the offhand. Miles Bridges, the basketball player, is great. He's kind of like P. Diddy, the musician. Great musician, bunch of hits, uncomfortable with the poster on my wall. And it's like, what are you going to give the fans if you're not going to give them a competitive team? You're not going to give them a clear path towards a rebuild. I guess give them veteran players with questionable moral backgrounds and domestic violence charges. It's a weird look, Hornets. But not everything is bad, because there's a few bright spots on this team. LaMelo Ball plays with joy. He really enjoys the game of basketball. Everyone out here is talking about analytics. Everyone out here is talking about defense. LaMelo Ball is just a kid on the playground, and when I watch him play, it puts a smile on my face. But I don't even think he's the most exciting thing on this Hornets franchise. I think that is Brandon Miller. The Hornets were absolutely trashed when they drafted Brandon Miller. As the player drafted after Victor Wembanyama, you're never going to have a great time with the fan base, but Brandon Miller has steadily improved since he came into the league. And in the modern NBA, he's about as good of a star player as you could ask for. Wide, he's an incredibly long player who's capable of getting in the passing lanes and playing excellent defense, and he scores at every level. Brandon Miller can be the #1 scoring option on a team for the next 10 or 12 years, and your franchise is in good hands. He's got a great contract, and he's team controlled for the next 6 years. Brandon Miller is an exciting building block. And look, you're going to have another high lottery draft pick. But I think the thesis statement of this video and how I truly feel about the Hornets is you can't rebuild for a decade. It's time to pick a direction. What do you guys think? Are the Hornets headed in the right direction? Are they lost? Do they need to sell the team again? Is it time for a new GM? Do you extend LaMelo Ball? Do you trade him? I want to hear from the real Hornets fans. Jump in the comments section.
Alright guys, we've been talking about this Mark Williams trade between the Lakers and Hornets for about 10 days now, but we finally have confirmation that it will not be happening. Not only reports and hints and rumors about it likely going the Lakers' way, them wanting to rescind the trade and not go through with it, but now we have actual confirmation and directly from the NBA commissioner. During his pre-All-Star game interview, Adam Silver talked about the Luka Doncic trade, the Lakers trades in general, and then he finally talked about the Mark Williams trade, the controversy between it, will it go through, did the Lakers rescind the trade, have the Hornets protested the trade and tried to get it overruled back in their favor? And well, according to Adam Silver, no. They have not challenged the trade, they have not protested the trade, or anything that previous reports said that they were trying to do. And here's what he had to say about it.
The answer to your first question is no. Charlotte has not filed a protest of any kind. I think the larger issue, reflecting your question in this day and age of sports science, is there a different standard of sort we should be applying in terms of players, passing physicals in trades, and it's something we should look at as a league. I will say this issue does not come up that often. I can't even remember, and certainly I don't think in my tenure a trade there's ever been a challenge because a player has failed a physical. But almost by definition, you get into a certain level of subjectivity, in where that standard is. But I think let's see what Charlotte decides to do here. But I think either way, it's gotten our attention. We understand that in the back and forth of teams and trades that to the extent we can reduce uncertainty, that's a positive thing. And obviously, I mentioned before that for players who are involved in trades, how disruptive it can be. I'm sure it's equally as disruptive to think you had been traded than not to be just not to have been traded. Disruptive for the player, disruptive for their teammates. So, we'll look at it. I mean, I'd say that's one of those areas when it comes to, the health and well-being of our players, medical science, that there have been incredible developments, and this is a rule sort of as interpreted now, hasn't changed for many decades at the league office.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but that to me is confirmation the trade won't be happening. The Hornets are done with the trade. They're not trying to protest the trade, challenge the trade, whatever you want to call it. They're not trying to do that. Dalton Knecht will be a Laker, or never was not a Laker to begin with. Mark Williams will eventually head back to Charlotte, and that's another thing we have to talk about. He's actually not back with their team yet. And simply put, the trade's over with. But like Adam Silver referred to, there might be future implications with this trade in regard to how physicals work and how teams determine if a player failed or passed their physical, and how that can affect a trade. Now, he talked about a trade like that not happening during his tenure, or not one that he can remember, but like I talked about during my last video, there actually had been a recent one, with Gary Payton II going back to Golden State back at the 2023 trade deadline. Part of the James Wiseman trade, it was actually a 4-team trade, and during that trade, or rather after that trade, Gary Payton actually failed his physical, revealing a core muscle issue with him, which eventually did hold him out for a couple of months, and yet, Golden State still went through with the trade. Now, we obviously can't directly compare this to the Mark Williams trade. We don't know what the Lakers found with him and why he failed that physical, but I guess it simply comes down to team jurisdiction and what they feel about and how they feel about the player in regard to their physical examination, how that might affect the trade, if they would make the trade or fail the trade. There's not really a clear-cut way to evaluate that. I mean, as far as I know, there's not any verbiage to determine if a trade should be failed or rescinded, or actually go through and accepted based on the player's physical examination. If and how serious an injury might be with them, their long-term health, or whatever it might be, there's not any clear-cut verbiage with that, and it's simply up to team jurisdiction. And not to go on a tangent with it, but as someone with a sports science background, I'd be really interested to hear the actual issues with him, why the Lakers failed him per that physical, what they found with him, why the Hornets maybe feel like they shouldn't have failed him or think there's not any risk with him long term. I'd be really interested to read about that, and hopefully we do get the details eventually. But again, official confirmation that the trade won't be going through. Not only that the trade's not happening, but that the Charlotte Hornets not protested it, much like we have heard from previous reports. So with that being said, officially official, Dalton Knecht will be a Laker, was never not a Laker, Cam Reddish with him, they got back their last tradable first round draft pick, also that first round draft pick swap, and the trade simply never happened to begin with, I guess. Apart from that though, we do have some other interesting things to talk about, and one of them has been controversy surrounding Austin Reaves. Not about what he did or did not do on the court or off the court, but about the fit with him between Luka Doncic and LeBron, but really with Luka Doncic. And a whole bunch of that came from a statement, or rather a reaction to a statement, from Brian Windhorst of ESPN. And shocker, right? A statement about the Lakers from ESPN. What he had to say though was, quote unquote, "I honestly believe the issue is Austin Reaves. He is the guy that needs the ball in his hands. They're gonna probably have to diminish the ball in Austin Reaves' hands and put it more in Luka's hands and let Luka Doncic operate with the ball." And well, that's pretty hilarious. Whether you're talking about saying that there's an issue with their team having one of the best records in the NBA dating back to January 1st, and then on top of that, trying to state that Austin Reaves can't play off the ball, when in reality he only just started playing on the ball for a majority of his time this season. I mean, the guy's been in the league for about 4 years now and he just started playing primarily on the ball, so that really tells you about how much he's watched him play. Not only about highlights or whatever it might be, but actually watching him play on the court, how he operates within their offense, dating back to last season, going back to his rookie season. The guy's been a primarily off the ball player. Yes, some occasional ISO play, some occasional pick and roll ball handling, but primarily being more of a catch and shoot guy, an off ball cutter, or a quick dribble drive guy, but not a guy that takes up the entire possession dribbling the ball. That's really never been him, even this season with more on ball duty. That's not him this season or any season of his NBA career thus far. So it really tells you both the knowledge that Brian Windhorst has of Austin Reaves, or rather lack thereof. Not watching him play very much, definitely not watching him beyond this season or dating back to last season, going back to his rookie season. He's not been very aware of what he does in the court. I don't think it's a problem. I mean, yes, he occasionally does operate within their offense with the ball, but I think there can be a timeshare between them. Should Austin Reaves be the third option between Luka, himself, and LeBron? Yes, obviously he should be, but that doesn't mean they're a terrible fit or can't ever play together on the court. That doesn't mean they have to bench Austin Reaves. I mean, we're talking about a guy averaging about 22 points per game during their past 10 games now, not to mention a 45-point game literally last week. The guy's very talented, he can play on the ball, can play off the ball, and yes, can fit with Luka Doncic, or even Luka Doncic and LeBron at the same time on the court. One game doesn't change that, even if it was a pretty poor game for them, primarily effort-wise, talking about that final game leading up to the All-Star break, but no, I'm not worried about the fit between them. I don't believe that Austin Reaves is a quote-unquote issue, and I'm not looking to bench him or do anything drastic with him within the rotation in regard to changing his role or anything like that. I think that would be the wrong way of going about it, with the right way actually being the two other guys you put around those three. It's got to be a good 5-man lineup combination, with a combination of offense, which those three obviously provide plenty of, then defense, guys that can play off the ball offensively, either provide rim protection or perimeter defense. Both would be great, but obviously that's pretty tough to find, with a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith being the next best option to put around them in my opinion. Not only the fit with Luka Doncic, the prior experience with him on the court, but then simply being a 3-and-D guy, an off-ball player offensively, a good versatile defender defensively, and then other guys in the court, whether it might be Jackson Hayes again at times, or maybe a guy like Gabe Vincent, could be Jared Vanderbilt, whoever it might be. That's a much more important part here, and finding those right combinations and combining that with the right scheme on the court with them, both offensively and defensively, that's a much more important issue they gotta touch on and find with their team going forward. And to fit with Luka Doncic, not really in regard to Austin Reaves, not saying they can't fit, that's not the issue here in my opinion. But with that being said, what do you guys think? How do you feel about both that, and then the Mark Williams trade being finalized and confirmed by Adam Silver, along with what he talked about in that interview? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.